Hey guys, I thought I'd check in, make one last video. I want to talk about the Pale Man and making inferences. I love that story. Uh, so we're going to talk a little bit about it. I hope you enjoyed it. But again, this is a story, like I said last week, if you're not making inferences, you're not going to really understand what's going on in the story. You need to read between the lines, or this story does not make any sense and does not have an ending. But if you read between the lines, it's a fantastic story with a really cool ending, and different people pick up on what's happening at different times. And by the end, the narrator knows what's happening, but he doesn't tell us. So, really cool story to talk about inferencing, because if you don't inference in this story makes zero sense. So the question is, the main question that we have on our inferencing exercise is, who is the Pale Man and what is he up to? So I hope you guys figured this out. This isn't a question that can be answered in a whole lot of different ways, right? Sometimes we have things that are open-ended. So all things are open-ended to a certain extent, but really there's an intention behind what the author is doing here, and the Pale Man does have an identity. The Pale Man, I don't know if you've gotten this or not, but the Pale Man is death. The Pale Man is death. So we think of, old stories, death with the cloak and death with the sickle that cuts grass, right? We've seen images of death, and here death is a person as well. It's personified as a pale man. So what's our evidence that the Pale Man is death? Well, we have a number of things, right? First of all, we know that the man in the story, the narrator, is um, sick. He's been sent away because he's sick. And the people who sent him away from the school, they don't seem very optimistic in the chances of him getting better, right? So we have that. The next thing that we have is that as he becomes more sick, the Pale Man seems to move closer and closer and closer and closer to him in this hotel. So that's a good indication, right? That, okay, this is death. Death, as you get more sick, is getting closer and closer and closer. And the night, so that another piece of evidence that kind of goes with that is the night that he falls unconscious, the Pale Man moves much closer. Instead of one room at a time, he skips 3 rooms. He gets right there. The other thing that shows us that the Pale Man is death is the fact that other people are dying in the hotel, and he keeps moving into their rooms. So we think of it when we're reading the story, it's like, oh, they die and move out, and he moves in. But what's really happening is he moves in and they die, right? And then the other thing, of course, is that the clerk and other people don't see the Pale Man. Only he sees the Pale Man. So the Pale Man's something supernatural. There's nobody staying in those rooms, he's told. So now we know, oh, the Pale Man is death. The Pale Man is coming for him. And he expresses that he understands that at the end. Okay, so what's happened at the end of the story? Well, this is kind of really, really important and tricky, because the story just kind of leaves off. It's like the door swings slowly open. Well, what's happened? Well, I'm going to tell you what happened. What's happened is that the Pale Man, the narrator has died. The Pale Man has come in, and the narrator has died. Well, what's our evidence? Well, the story stops. That's a big part of evidence, because what type of narrator we have? A first-person narrator. He can't narrate any longer after he dies, right? So the story cuts off because the narrator has also been cut off. He's died. That's a piece of evidence. Also, the door is bolted. That's a really good piece of evidence. He says, I wait behind the bolted door. And then the door swings open. Well, how did it open? Something supernatural is coming in. That's the Pale Man. That's death. You can't hide from death behind a bolted door. Okay. Um, Other pieces of evidence are kind of in what the narrator says about I know what's coming. I should have known this was the case the night that I fell unconscious and he moved closer. The fact that the narrator is now confined to his bed is showing us that he's getting sicker and sicker. So we know that in the end he's died. Alright. So our last bit was just to list some strategies you used to make references. Well, one thing that I did was I thought of my prior knowledge a little bit, right? There are ideas of the Thin Man and of the guy with the cloak as death, and the idea of a skeleton for a face or a pale face, right? So we've kind of seen this personification of death before. If this was the first time anybody had ever made death like a human being, then it would be a lot harder to get this story, and we might not get it. But that I'm using prior knowledge there. I'm also paying really close attention to the narrator. The narrator is figuring out what's happened, and when he figures out what's happened, he draws our attention to certain clues. He draws our attention. He says, I should have known this. Now, on the night that I fell unconscious, he skipped 3 rooms. So he's telling us, think about those clues. He doesn't tell us what his conclusions are, but he draws our attention to us and says, this is important in figuring this out. So that's something that we do to figure it out. We're trying to determine, well, what motivates the character? Why is this pale man getting closer and closer and closer? And when we see this old lady die, we kind of get a hint that, oh, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe that's what the pale man is after, right? So that helps us a little bit. And then we watch for the details, really important details. The fact that the clerk doesn't know who the pale man is, has never seen them, right? That's an important detail. We're supposed to kind of think about that. Well, how could that be? That the clerk wouldn't know that somebody else is in another room, right? So that starts to narrow things down. Is it somebody sneaking around? Is it something supernatural that only the narrator can see? That's what we're doing when we're trying to figure out and make our inferences. Okay, so that's our inferencing exercise. I hope you guys had fun with that story. I love that story. And that's it for the year. I hope that some of you followed. I know some of you did. Followed through some of these lessons so that you're ready to move on to next year a little bit. If you did, you're certainly more ready, especially now that we've done our inferencing and we understand our plot graphing and types of characters and types of narrators. Those are really important things going forward. So we've done those over the last number of weeks. And we've worked on our reading and reading for understanding and making connections. We've worked on all those things. So that's really great. I really appreciate it that a lot of you guys have, or that some of you guys have taken the time to work on this. And I just want to say, like, this is it. This is the end of the week. This is the end of the year. Have a really amazing summer. Next year, grade 10. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but looking forward to seeing you guys again. Looking forward to being back, and I just hope that you have a good day, a good week, and a fantastic summer. We'll see you guys next year. Bye bye.